Hi Crazy Christmas members, I'm Valerie and I want to show you a couple of tips today and just kind of get you started on the construction of your blocks. So I have these two blocks completed, our first stitchery block and our first plain block. One of the months we'll have 3 of them to do because we have an odd number of blocks. So for your first month you'll have 2. Now when we go to do the sashing in between, because this is a quilt as you go method, we're going to have a skinny piece of silk, charcoal silk on the top, and the fatter, which is 1.25 inches on the bottom. And this will be right sides together. You'll pin these 2 in place. You'll sew 1/4 inch. You can use your walking foot, just make sure it's 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then it will look like this one. So I'll just rotate this so you can see. So this is the front. So it's only 3/4 inch now showing. And on the back, you have your 1 1/4 right sides facing that you've sewn. And it will be 1 inch now on the back. So what we'll do now is we'll stitch this together with this first block so you can see how to turn this over and hand slip stitch it down. Okay, now I'm just at my machine here and I have my walking foot on that has the 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you don't have a walking foot with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, just use your 1/4 inch seam foot and make sure you've pinned it really well so there's an even flow through the machine. Now I like to start mine using my flywheel and I just kind of grab a couple of stitches so it doesn't go crazy when I start, and then I'll remove the pins as I go. And obviously I can only remove the pins on the top because the ones on the bottom I can't reach. Just let the machine do the work for you. Go slow over those pins at the back so you don't wreck your needle. And you don't need to backstitch it at the end because you'll be sewing across that seam allowance anyways. And that's your seam. Now that we have our sashing strips attached, both front and back, we'll be connecting these 2 blocks together. So again, right sides together. Line up your sashing strip with both blocks. And then we're going to sew 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now what we have here is our 2 blocks connected with the sashing strip. And the sashing strip, same thing. You're going to start with your flywheel. You're going to go in 1/4 inch and it will be really tight. You'll have your 1 1/4 inch on the back and you only have about 1/4 inch or so showing on the back that we've pinned. So just slowly sew and remove the pins as you go. So you can see that there isn't very much room for our seam allowance, but there'll be just enough room for it anyways. Again, we don't need to backstitch because we'll be coming back over this seam. So now we're all connected. Our two blocks are connected, and I'll show you how to do our slip stitch now. So now we have our two blocks connected with our sashing strip. And if you have any of these little pieces of silk fray, just gently go in and cut them off so they're not in there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is flip this over, and our seam allowances will tuck into each other here. And then we're going to fold this back to our stitch line, tuck those two seam allowances in, and then fold it over like that. So that will finish it on the back. And you can pin this as well. So it's held in place for when you slip stitch. Now we're going to do the slip stitch, but first I'm going to show you how to do a quilter's knot. So I have my needle threaded here with just some neutral cotton thread. You take the end of the thread, crisscross the needle, wrap it around 2 or 3 times, hold it in your hand, and then pull the needle through nice and slow, and you'll get a small little knot. Okay, so next we're going to slip stitch our sashing onto our crazy quilt. So once you have it pinned, you're going to slide your needle in behind, and you're just going to take just a tiny bit of your sashing strip, and then you're going to go back in right where you came up into your background. And when you pull it tight, you're not going to see your stitches at all. So they'll be completely hidden, just like if you were putting the binding on your quilt top. You want to make sure that this fold covers your stitch line from the top, so you can't see that at all. So that's kind of your guide to where it needs to be folded over to. So just carry on tucking, stitching, and getting your blocks connected together. Good luck, everyone. I'll be back soon with more tips.